Hey everybody, welcome to Always Bored Never Boring. In 2020, Ravensburger published a game called the Princess Bride Adventure Book Game. I always wanted to try it. The Princess Bride is one of the best fantasy films ever made, but never got a chance. In 2022, they made a second adventure book game based on The Wizard of Oz. Again, I wanted to try it, but had less interest in the theme. Then recently, I was in a local bookstore and I saw a copy of the third adventure book game based on Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings movies, which Ravensburger published in 2023. I decided there and then that it was finally time to try one of these games. Shortly afterwards was Amazon Prime Day, and both the Wizard of Oz and Lord of the Rings flavoured adventure book games were discounted, so of course I bought them both. The interesting thing with this series of games is they share the same core rules and same core principles, but then they put their own little spin on things. As such, while the games play in very similar ways, you do get a different experience with each. Before we begin, I just want to explain this video is in two halves. First there is the review and then there is the playthrough. For the purposes of the review, I'm going to be predominantly looking at the Wizard of Oz game, as in my opinion it's a little simpler and a little easier. However, I did run a poll with the Always Bored Never Boring club members and they voted to see a playthrough using the Lord of the Rings set, so stick around for that later on. The core idea here is you are presented with a book. On each page of the book you have a scene or sequence from the movie. On the left of the page you have instructions for setting up the scene and any special rules, including the losing conditions. And then on the right you have a series of challenges to complete in order to progress to the next page of the book. The scenes form a mini campaign, and while each scene plays in fundamentally the same way, the differing lose conditions and challenges means each scenario has its own little twist on the formula. In the Wizard of Oz game there are 6 scenes or levels, starting with Kansas, moving to Munchkin Land, travelling along the Yellow Brick Road, visiting the Emerald City, saving Dorothy from the Wicked Witch, and finally returning home. Playing through a scene is exceptionally simple. This is a game that you can teach in minutes and get going. And as a little aside, I did want to mention that Ravensburger provides these games with the tokens already punched. To play your first game, you just need to shuffle a few decks of cards and read 3 pages of rules. You can start playing almost immediately. The first scenario in the Wizard of Oz game is set in Kansas. To get started, you shuffle the story deck. This is a deck of 40 cards comprising 5 suits of 8 cards, representing magic, wonder, courage, brains and heart. These are the core component of the game, as in order to complete challenges it will be necessary to collect and then discard different card sets. After shuffling, we deal a hand of 4 cards to each player. The game says it's for 1 to 4 players, although rules for solo play are omitted from the rules somehow. Nevertheless, there are rules for solo play in the Lord of the Rings version of the game, and I assume they work the same way in both titles, whereby if you are playing alone you deal 4 cards to yourself, and then you deal a hand of 6 cards to a dummy player. The dummy player never takes a turn, but the 6 cards in that hand can be accessed as you play to give you the options that would normally be presented by other players at the table. Next we shuffle the plot deck. This deck is different for each scenario and will throw different hazards at you to keep you on your toes. It's basically the AI for the game, consistently pushing back against your actions. And then we shuffle the special card deck, more on this in a moment. For this scene, the rules tell us to put the Dorothy miniature in the pigsty. There are miniatures in the game for Dorothy, Glinda, the Wicked Witch, Tin Man, Scarecrow and Cowardly Lion. They're rather lovely, I think. Next we put out other tokens necessary for this scene. We place a horse and a cow, both happy side up, and then a pig and a chicken, grumpy side up. The farmhands go in the haystack, and we place a broken wagon in the barnyard. Finally we put a twister on the start space of the twister path. The special rules for this scenario tell us that if the farmhands move adjacent to a grumpy animal, the animal will become happy, and if the farmhands move adjacent to the broken wagon, they will fix the wagon. We are also told we will lose if the twister reaches the farmhouse or if all 4 animals become grumpy. From those goals, it should be clear that this is a game of balance and measuring your actions between firefighting and advancing your goals. In this particular scenario, you will frequently have to spend your time tending to the animals, but you can't do that forever as the twister is approaching. At some point you will need to commit to completing the challenges. This is the central tension of the game, deciding when to play safe and when to get moving. We are now ready to start, and you will probably notice at this point there are no player characters. That's because the players are working together to tell the story of the Wizard of Oz, collaborating to put in play the sequence of events that will allow Dorothy and her friends to navigate safely to the closing credits. On a turn, the active player first gets 2 movement points. These can be distributed as desired to move characters, either plastic miniatures or cardboard tokens, although in some scenarios there will be characters you are not allowed to move. In this scenario we have 2 characters we can move, Dorothy and the farmhands. We can move one of the characters up to 2 spaces, we can move both of the characters 1 space each, or we can forfeit our movement completely. While moving, we may be able to fulfill steps towards completing a challenge. For example, as we move the farmhands, we can fix the wagon or make animals happy. Interacting with the tokens does not end our movement, so if we have additional movement points, we can then continue. However, at this stage we cannot play any cards. After the free movement phase, we enter the storytelling phase. Here we have a range of actions, and we can do as many as we like as often as we are able. The first action is trade. This is limited to once per turn. You simply swap one card from your hand with one card from another player. This is also how you access the cards in the dummy player's hand when playing solo. The second action is discarding. Each card you discard from your hand gives you 1 point of movement. This is essential as you don't get enough free movement points in a scenario to do everything you need to do. Just look at this path to Professor Marvel's caravan that Dorothy needs to travel to. It costs 7 movement points to get up there and another 7 movement points to get back. But of course, each card you discard is one card you can't use for completing challenges, so you need to carefully manage your resources, making sure you don't carelessly discard too many of the cards you will need later. Speaking of challenges, completing a challenge is the third possible action. To do this, you have to fulfill all the criteria of the challenge and then discard the specified cards. For example, the challenge Shiftless Farmhands states that each animal must be happy and the wagon must be fixed. If at any time during the storytelling step those conditions are true, you can discard 1 brain card, 1 heart card and 1 courage card to complete the challenge. You get to pop a completion token on that challenge and you also get a reward. It's worth noting that in each scene except the last, there is a special song challenge where the characters must belt out one of the classics from the movie. Don't worry, the players don't actually have to sing. These are similar to other challenges, except they have variable rewards and you can choose how many cards to discard to complete them. Discard 1 card and you are successful, but you will miss out on tasty treats. Discard the maximum of 4 cards to get the best reward of the lot. This lends an interesting choice to each level. You can opt for an easy route to victory now, but you will miss out on important rewards that will benefit you later, or you could take the hard path, risking early defeat but earning greater rewards for your hardship. The rewards include the option to manipulate the board in some way, such as giving characters free movement, drawing a story card from the deck, gaining a Glinda the Good Witch favour token, or taking a special card from the special card deck. The favour tokens can be discarded during the storytelling phase to either reset the whole scenario. This is a last gasp option if things are going bad, because if at any point you fail a scenario, you are supposed to restart the campaign from the very beginning. Alternatively, you can spend a favour token to immediately draw 3 story cards. This can be incredibly helpful when you are close to completing a challenge, but you are searching the deck for one type of card that doesn't seem to want to show up. These special cards are more powerful versions of the story cards. You can discard them for movement, you can discard them if a challenge or event asks you to discard any card, or you can play them for their special abilities. And of course, these abilities are very powerful. They may let you draw more cards, or move characters, or avoid negative effects the game throws at you. Some of the special cards are wilds, which you can use as any type of card to complete a challenge, which is always helpful. And as an added bonus, with a few exceptions, players can play a special card on anyone's turn. They don't have to wait for their own turn to roll around or worry about trading cards with the active player. During the storytelling phase, any cards you play, story or special, go into the story discard pile. If the story deck runs out, you simply reshuffle. And that covers all of the actions: trade, discard, complete challenges, play a favour token, or play a special card. When you have run out of actions you can make, you draw 2 cards from the story deck, and then the bad things happen. Each scenario has a unique plot deck, and now you draw the top card from that deck and complete the instructions. These will usually create situations that set you back in your goals. For example, in the Kansas scenario, the plot card will often make the animals grumpy, forcing you to spend subsequent movement points to run around tending to them. Furthermore, plot cards will often move the twister, the ticking clock that forces you to keep moving. After completing the instructions on the plot card, you discard it. If at any point you play the last card in the plot deck, you reshuffle the discard pile to form a new deck and play continues. The very last thing to do on your turn is discard down to a maximum of 6 cards in your hand. I find this isn't often necessary as you do tend to burn through a lot of cards, especially on turns when you have completed challenges. Play then proceeds to the next player in turn, and this continues until you complete all the challenges and make it through the scenario. Hooray! Or you lose. Boo. The idea is to play through all 6 scenarios as a campaign. Any favour tokens you earn or special cards that you won carry over to the next scenario, so you gradually build resources into your story deck to improve your chances. And while it is possible to play through the whole campaign in one sitting, each scenario can be completed in less than half an hour, it's very easy to save your campaign status to pick up the campaign at a later date if you so choose. I played through the Wizard of Oz game with my daughter. We played through 1 chapter per night over the course of a week, and we had a lot of fun. And I do think this game is fun, for what it is, which is an accessible family-friendly title. It's incredibly simple, incredibly straightforward, and for the most part you are doing the same thing each turn. You are trying to gather the cards you need in your hand while shuffling playing pieces around the board into the correct configuration. It's a concept anyone should be able to understand immediately, or as soon as they have got their head around the idea of the fact they don't get their own playing piece but are sharing control of all the moving parts of an intricate machine. And despite that simplicity, despite the fact all you do every turn is collect cards and discard cards, no 2 scenarios feel exactly the same. The simplicity also allows the designers to build on those core mechanisms, so no 2 adventure books feel exactly the same either. The Lord of the Rings game has the same mechanisms as the Wizard of Oz game, but there are a few twists that make it special. There are small changes. Obviously they have dropped the song challenges with variable rewards, and they've increased the campaign in scope to cover 8 scenes from the trilogy. And then there are big changes that I feel significantly ramp up the challenge. In the Lord of the Rings version of the game, there are now 6 suits of 7 cards in the story deck, rather than 5 suits of 8 cards, meaning it's a little harder to get the cards you need when you need them. But even worse, the 6th suit is for the Ring of Power. The 7 ring cards are wild. You can use them as any other card type to complete a challenge. You can discard them for movement, or you can discard them when you are asked to discard any card from your hand. Additionally, in each chapter there is a special rule printed on the board that you can discard a ring to activate. That sounds great, but here's the kicker. Every time you use a ring card, you have to increase a corruption tracker by 1 point. At certain steps along the tracker, you will be forced to draw a corruption card that will hurt you, and if the corruption tracker gets to the last space, then you lose the whole campaign. It's a lovely bit of thematic integration. The ring cards are incredibly powerful, you can do almost anything with them, and they can make it trivial to complete some challenges, but with each use of the ring its influence on you grows. Use it too much, and all hope is lost. And of course, as a result of this rule, it means you are often left with rings clagging up your hand because you don't dare risk using them, and even discarding them unused will cause the corruption tracker to move. So the ring will sit in your hand, and the desire to use it grows. The need to use it as you run out of options grows. It's very nicely done. And the bad news doesn't end there, because in the Lord of the Rings game the plot deck for each chapter is 15 cards, and if the plot deck ever runs out, you lose. So in addition to whatever loose conditions are embedded in each scene, there is always a ticking clock. As a result, I feel the Wizard of Oz game is more laid back and better suited to families and younger players. It has some challenge to it, but it's quite a relaxed play experience. By contrast, the Lord of the Rings game is much more tense and feels like an effort to skew the difficulty for a slightly more savvy crowd. Regardless, I think both games are lovely. Instantly accessible, engaging, fun as a solo or group experience, and beautifully presented with excellent art and components. I have enjoyed them both enough to know I definitely want to pick up the Princess Bride game too. And that is it for the review portion of this video, but we aren't done yet. I promised you a little playthrough of the first scenario from the Lord of the Rings game, so let's do that. So this is the setup for the first chapter of the Lord of the Rings game, and it covers the hobbits fleeing the Shire, meeting Strider at the Prancing Pony, and then battling the Ringwraiths at Weathertop. Frodo and Sam are in the top left of the board outside Bag End. Gandalf is on the road to the Shire. Merry and Pippin are in the bottom left corner, they are in Farmer Maggot's field. Aragorn is off the board at the moment, but he is at the Prancing Pony, and there are 2 Ringwraiths moving around the centre of the board. First we must complete Keep It Secret, Keep It Safe. Frodo and Gandalf must be at the hearth at Bag End, Sam must be on the road to the Shire, and we have to discard 1 insight card from our hand. If we do that, Gandalf is removed from play, we gain a story card and we can move on with the adventure. The second challenge is It Comes in Pints, All 4 of the hobbits must be on orange Bree spaces. There are 3 spaces for Bree in the bottom right corner. Once we have all the hobbits on those spaces, we discard 1 insight and 2 adventure, and then we will activate Aragorn and he will join us as we race to Weathertop. The final challenge is we do not stop till nightfall. Aragorn, Frodo, Samwise and 1 other hobbit must be at Weathertop, and 1 of the Ringwraiths must be in an adjacent space. If we can set up that situation and then discard 1 Courage and 2 Warfare cards, we have completed this first chapter. You will notice in the centre of the board there is a special hiding spot. 3 cards in the plot deck will force you to place a hobbit on the hiding spot. Furthermore, if a Ringwraith moves into or through a space containing a hobbit, that hobbit is also moved to the hiding spot. If at any point there are 2 hobbits in the hiding spot, we instantly lose. Because we are playing solo, we first draw a hand of 6 cards for the dummy player. And it's not a great hand. We've got 1 Warfare, 1 Courage, 2 Adventure, but then we have 2 of the special ring cards. Those ring cards are like wilds. We can use them to represent any symbol, or we can discard one to use the special 1 ring ability for this particular scenario, which is move a Black Rider 1 space. However, if we use a ring card for any of those things, we have to advance our corruption track. The corruption track has 15 spaces and it does not reset between levels, so those 15 spaces have to last us all the way through 8 chapters. That means we really don't want to use a ring if we can help it. Next, we draw a hand of 4 cards for ourselves. And this is much better. We have the insight card that we need to complete the first challenge, we have a warfare card, and then we have 2 mystery cards, which we do not need to complete any of the challenges, so we can basically use those to discard for extra movement. At the start of our turn, we get 2 free movement points, which we can distribute between our characters as we see fit. Bearing in mind what needs to be done, I'm going to use both of those movement points to move Gandalf into the hearth. Then we go into the storytelling phase where you can discard cards for different reasons. I have some cards in my hand that I do not need, so I can use them for extra movement. I'm going to discard this mystery, and I will move Merry there. Merry is now directly in the path of a Ringwraith, but that's not a problem because if the Ringwraith does land on Merry, he will get moved to the hiding spot, and that effectively gives me an extra point of movement without having to spend any more cards. The hobbits are never allowed to move into a space with a Ringwraith. Aragorn, on the other hand, is allowed to move into spaces with Ringwraiths because he isn't scared of them. I have a second mystery card which I'm going to discard, and we're going to use that to move Frodo to the hearth. That leaves me with 1 Warfare and 1 Insight card in my hand. I could, if I wanted to, swap one of those cards with a card from the dummy player, but I don't want to do that at this time. I'm going to call that the end of my turn. That being the case, we draw 2 replacement cards from the story deck. We have a Warfare and a Mystery. That's really good for us. Remember, none of our challenges on the right hand side of the board require the mystery cards to complete them, which means anytime I get a mystery card, I know I can safely spend that card for movement without causing myself a problem later on. The final thing we have to do is draw the first plot card. We have drawn card 14. Looking at the chart for chapter 1, it says 13 to 15 moves both Black Riders 2 spaces. We can do this in any order. First we will move the 1 Ringwraith near Bree. They will always move clockwise. Next we move the Ringwraith by the Shire, and poor Merry is going to get run down. As the Ringwraith passes through his space, he is forced to dive into hiding. Now that would have been really useful if the second Ringwraith hadn't also moved and blocked off my route to the Prancing Pony. Never mind, our second turn begins and we get our 2 free points of movement. We are going to give both of those points of movement to Sam. Sam is going to move to the road to the Shire. At this point, Frodo and Gandalf are at Bag End, and Samwise is on the road, which means we can discard 1 insight card to complete our first challenge. The insight goes into the discard pile, Gandalf will be removed from the board, we place a completion token on the challenge, and we get a reward. In this case, we get to draw 1 card from the story deck. And we have got a Warfare card. With that first challenge complete, we now need to get all of the hobbits to the spaces in Bree, and then we need to discard 2 adventure and 1 insight. There are 2 adventure cards in the dummy player's hand, but we need a second insight card. We also need to do some additional movement because Merry is on the hiding spot and we do not want him to stay there. And I am going to burn a lot of cards. I'm going to burn a Warfare, a Courage, and a Mystery. That gives me 3 points of movement. I'm going to move to here. It's a dangerous spot to be on, but I am in Bree, and because the ring wraiths only move clockwise, I am not in immediate peril. With that done, I draw my 2 cards, and it's a really good draw because we've got the insight card we need. We also have another warfare card. And then we draw a plot card. It's card 8, which says move both black riders 1 space. We start a fresh turn. I have 2 movement points. I am obviously going to use one of those to move Merry into the prancing pony where he will be safe. The ring wraiths cannot get him there. But now I need to start getting the other hobbits in position. So I'm going to move Pippin out of Farmer Maggot's farm. And at the moment I'm not going to spend any more cards. I'm going to leave it there like that for now. I'm going to see what I get in my hand, and I'm going to see what happens when I draw the plot card. I have drawn an insight card and a courage card. Let's see what our ring wraiths are going to do. Move either of the black riders 2 spaces. And I'm actually going to move the black rider at the bottom of the board so that he moves onto Pippin's space. That will push Pippin into hiding, which gets him closer to Bree. Like so. We start a fresh turn. I get 2 points of movement. I'm going to use both of those points of movement on Pippin. That gets Pippin to Bree. I am then going to discard a Palantir and a Courage, and I'm going to use those cards to move Frodo. He moves 2 spaces to there. And again, we're going to leave it like that for now, except I am going to swap a Warfare card from my hand with an Adventure card from the dummy deck to start setting up my hand so I can complete It Comes in Pints. So this goes to the dummy player, and this comes to me. And now we draw 2 more cards into our hand. And again, it's a good pull because these cards can be discarded for movement if required. We draw our new plot card. We have drawn card 10, move either black rider 2 spaces. Now that is annoying because I could advance one black rider 2 spaces to attack Frodo, moving him to hiding, which will save me a couple of movement cards. However, that black rider will then be blocking off Sam from joining the rest of the crew, so I don't want to do that. So instead I have to move the other black rider, which is moving him dangerously close to Pippin. And going into the new turn, that does mean I am going to have to spend one of my movement points to get Pippin off the road and into the prancing pony. For my second movement point, I'm going to move Frodo 1 space. And then I need to burn some cards. I need to get moving. I'm going to spend a Warfare and an Insight. That gets me 2 movement points. I'm going to dash through the hiding spot and down onto the road to Bree. Like so. And I'm going to leave it there again for now. So I draw 2 more cards into my hand. And we have been really lucky because we still haven't drawn any more ring cards. We have a Warfare and a Courage. And then we draw a plot card. And the plot card we have drawn is number 13, probably the worst we could have drawn. It moves both black riders 2 spaces. So first of all, the black rider down in Bree will attack Frodo and send him scurrying back to the hiding spot. Even worse, the second black rider will now move around and block the road out of the Shire so that Samwise is trapped. None of that is ideal. Okay, so as we finish that turn, let's just take stock. In my hand I have 5 cards. I have the 2 adventure cards and the insight card that I need to complete It Comes in Pints. Furthermore, I have 1 warfare card and 1 courage card that I can spend. Meanwhile, the dummy player has 2 ring cards, which I really don't want to use, 1 adventure card, which I could discard for extra movement if I needed, and then the 2 warfare cards and the courage card that I need to complete We Do Not Stop Till Nightfall, which will complete the challenge for us. But let's not get too ahead of ourselves. First of all, we need to get all of our hobbits to Bree. And at the moment, it's not going very well. I have 2 free movement points. I'm going to use them both on Frodo. He goes to there. I'm then going to spend a card. I'm going to use this courage card to move Frodo 1 more space. Frodo is now in Bree and not in any immediate peril. The problem is, Sam is trapped. Now there are some cards in the story deck that will force a hobbit to immediately move to the hiding spot. There are 3 in the deck and we haven't had one yet, so I'm really hoping one is going to turn up soon because it will teleport Sam out of the Shire. Failing that, hopefully that Black Rider will move 1 space and Sam will have access to the rest of the board again. But for now, let's draw our 2 cards and see what happens. Well, we had a good run. We've got 2 ring cards, which we really do not want. Let's see what the plot card does to us. Things are looking a bit grim. But we have drawn card 3, move any hobbit to the hiding spot. If it's already occupied, you lose this chapter. Well, the hiding spot is not occupied, but it will be now by Sam. This is exactly what I was hoping would happen. And that's really good. That has really helped us out just to the point when we drew some rings we didn't need. So let's start our new turn. We get 2 free movement points. I'm giving them both to Sam. He goes to there. We need 1 more movement to get into Bree. So I'm going to spend this Warfare card. That moves Sam onto Frodo's space. It is allowed for multiple characters to share the same space on this particular scenario, so that's fine. And now all 4 hobbits are on orange spaces in Bree, so we can complete It Comes in Pints. We spend our Insight and our 2 adventure cards. And a couple of things will happen now. First of all, Aragorn appears at the Prancing Pony. And then we also get to draw the top card from the special card deck. These are very hard to come by, but the special cards are really powerful. And the card we have drawn is Galadriel's Hair. This card is excellent. Draw 3 cards from the story deck, then discard 1 card from your hand. If you discard a 1 ring card, do not advance the corruption track. That is excellent. We're going to play this card immediately because all I have in my hand is 2 ring cards and I am not happy about that at all. And it's a really good draw. We've got 2 insight cards and an adventure card. All of those can be discarded for movement, which is brilliant. I also then get to bin a ring card, which is fantastic. And we are still not done. It's still my turn. I can do a swap with the dummy hand. I am going to trade my ring card for this adventure card because this adventure card is useful and I really don't want to use the ring card. And now we can try and start completing We Do Not Stop Till Nightfall. Here we have to get Aragorn, Frodo, Sam, and at least 1 other hobbit to Weathertop. Additionally, 1 of the Black Riders has to be in a space next to Weathertop. We can immediately start dealing with that. I'm going to discard these 2 adventure cards for movement. And I'm using them both to get Frodo to Weathertop. Next, let's get Sam home. I have 2 insight cards. I can discard them both to get him to Weathertop as well. Now I just need Aragorn and either Merry or Pippin to join them. But it is the end of my go. I draw a ring and an adventure card. We have 3 more rings in the dummy hand. We discarded 1. We have 1 here. That means there are only 2 left in the deck. Hopefully we can avoid them. And now we have to draw a plot card. And it's a good one. We move both Black Riders 1 space. The good thing there is 1 of the ring wraiths is adjacent to Weathertop. Now all we have to do is get our other heroes in position. At the start of my turn I get 2 free movement points. I'm using them both on Merry. He is making a dash for Weathertop. But of course he is in extreme danger there from that ring wraith, so we are going to discard a card. I'm playing this adventure card for 1 movement point. And we have our 3 hobbits in position. The last thing we have to do is get Aragorn up there, and the good thing about Aragorn is he isn't bothered by ring wraiths. I have 1 gold ring in my hand. I do not want it. I'm going to trade it with the dummy player. I will swap it for the courage card I need. Then I draw my 2 new cards. And this is good because those are mystery cards and I can spend those for movement. But of course we have to remember to draw a plot card too. And it's card number 2 and this is not what we wanted. We have to move 1 of our hobbits to the hiding spot. Luckily we left Pippin behind at Bree as a decoy, so he is going to move to the hiding spot. It's not the end of the world, but it does mean I'm going to have to spend 1 of my movement points this turn to get him back out of hiding. Speaking of which, it is my turn and I get my 2 movement points. I will use 2 on Aragorn. Remember, I can move him there because he does not care about ring wraiths. I will spend a mystery card to move Pippin. He can just go to there. I'm then going to do another trade with the dummy hand. They take my mystery card, I take the warfare card. And that's me done, so I draw 2 new cards into my hand. It's another ring, but also another mystery, so it's a good hand overall. And then we draw our plot card. And we did the right thing moving Pippin because it is card 1, move any hobbit to the hiding spot. Back you go, Pippin. Say hi to Fatty Bolger for me while you're there. The good news is I can tell you that we are definitely going to complete this chapter successfully this turn. I get my 2 free movement points. I'm going to give 1 to Aragorn. I will give my 2nd movement point to Pippin. I now have all my characters in position. Frodo, Sam and Merry are at Weathertop, protected by Aragorn, and there is a ring wraith in an adjacent space. All I need to do is discard 2 warfare cards and 1 courage card. I am 1 warfare card short, but there is a warfare card in the dummy player's hand. So they can have this ring card and I will have this warfare card. I then play 2 warfare cards and 1 courage card, and that completes the chapter. And that is a pretty convincing win, but then this is the tutorial scenario, it's not supposed to be very hard. Having said that, it did beat me the first 2 times I played it. All told, at the end of the mission we had 6 plot cards left in the deck, which means we had 6 more turns to finish things off. I had just 1 card in my hand, it was a mystery card that I could have discarded for movement. There you go Pippin, you can move in extra space. Meanwhile, the dummy hand was a shambles. It was 5 ring cards and 1 mystery card. Oh, and look at that, I completely forgot to put my completion tokens on the other challenges. I'm a winner. And that's that. As I said, this is the introductory scenario. It's not supposed to be very difficult. You really should be able to get through it without spending any ring cards. The idea with this campaign is you hold off using the rings as much as possible. You will need a whole bunch of them at the end of the campaign, and if you have racked up too much corruption, you will fail. But this is a nice, gentle introduction to this game system, and I really like it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, because that is it from me for now. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please consider pressing the like button. If you really like this video, please consider subscribing if you don't already do so, and hopefully I will see you all again very soon. Bye bye everyone. Bye bye.